Look, we need to talk about what just went down in the baseball world, because this is getting wild. Jeff Passan and John Heyman just dropped some massive free agency bombs, and honestly, Blue Jays fans might want to sit down for this one. So here's what's happening. John Heyman, who's been pretty quiet lately, suddenly comes out and reveals that 3 teams nobody was really talking about have jumped into the Bo Bichette sweepstakes. We're talking the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Cubs. And yeah, that's a problem. For weeks now, it's basically been the Blue Jays and Red Sox going back and forth, right? That's been the narrative. But now the Yankees are sniffing around, and you can imagine how Yankees fans on Twitter are reacting. They're going absolutely crazy. Meanwhile, Jays fans are starting to sweat a little bit. Think about this for a second. The nightmare scenario here isn't even Bo walking. It's Bo walking to the Yankees specifically, while the Jays simultaneously whiff on Kyle Tucker. Because let's be real, if Toronto lands Tucker and Bo decides to bounce to New York, okay, that stings, but you've got Kyle Tucker. That softens the blow considerably. But imagine Bo in pinstripes and Tucker signing somewhere else. Then you're stuck scrambling for Alex Bregman or somebody a tier below that, and suddenly the entire offseason feels like a disaster. Now, the Dodgers' interest makes sense if Bo wants a shorter deal. The Cubs could throw long-term money at him, especially since they've apparently been eliminated from the Tucker race. But the Yankees thing is what's really got people talking. They've got Jazz Chisholm, and according to Heyman, they're actually listening to offers on him. So maybe they're clearing space for something big. That's not exactly comforting if you're wearing blue and white. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Jeff Passan was on Blue Sky, and someone asked him point blank about the Jays' chances of landing at least one of Tucker, Bichette, or Bregman, and what about getting 2 of them? His answer was pretty revealing. He said there are scenarios where they get none, 1 or 2. Obviously, there's a world where Bichette goes to Boston, Bregman to Arizona, Tucker to the Dodgers. All of that is on the table. But then he said something crucial. He thinks the Blue Jays will ultimately get at least one of the 3, and here's the kicker about Tucker specifically. If he doesn't go to Toronto, it'll be because he preferred a shorter-term, higher-average annual value deal. But if Tucker wants length, the Blue Jays are the likeliest destination. That's huge. Passan doesn't just throw that out there casually. He's extremely careful with his words, even in social media posts. The fact that he's specifically saying the Jays are the most likely landing spot if Tucker wants a long-term deal tells you something about what he's hearing behind the scenes. And the fact that he's willing to say on the record that he thinks they get at least one of these guys, he didn't have to include that. He chose to. So what does this mean? Well, Tucker probably has an offer sitting on the table from Toronto right now. 10 years, somewhere between $300 and $350 million. And his camp, along with Bichette's camp, they're probably waiting to see if that number goes up. My guess is it doesn't. At that point, Tucker has to decide if he wants to take the Dodgers route and sign a shorter deal with opt-outs, kind of like what some other stars have done. Sign for 3 years, opt out after each season, and hit free agency again next year when the class is weaker and he can command even more money. The recruiting campaign for Tucker has been relentless, too. You've got Joey Votto commenting on Tucker's Instagram posts saying, "Come on, Miles Straw's been after him, George Springer, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Everybody in that Blue Jays clubhouse wants Kyle Tucker there." And honestly, with every day that passes without him signing somewhere else, it almost feels like destiny that he ends up in Toronto. Because who else is giving him that long-term security? The Dodgers aren't. The Astros already traded him. This might be Toronto's moment. But there's the flip side. Every day that goes by could also mean he's not getting the money he wants on a long-term deal, which makes that short-term, high AAV Dodgers contract look more appealing. That's the fear. That's what keeps Jays fans up at night right now. One positive development, though, Tatsuya Imai signed with the Astros yesterday. 3 years, around $60 million, with opt-outs after each season. A lot of people thought he was Yankees bound, and that would have made their rotation absolutely terrifying. Max Fried, Garrett Cole at 35 coming off injury, Carlos Rodon, and then adding Imai. Thank goodness that didn't happen. He's in the American League, sure, but at least he's not in the AL East. That's a win for everyone not wearing pinstripes. The Blue Jays went with Dylan Cease instead, and honestly, their rotation looks pretty solid right now, but the real prize is still out there. Tucker and Bichette, one or both. That's what this entire offseason hinges on. There's been some speculation that if the Jays want both Tucker and Bichette, one of them probably has to take a shorter deal. My money would be on Bichette being the one who does that. He takes an opt-out heavy contract, proves himself, and hits free agency again in a year or two. That way Toronto can afford both without completely obliterating their payroll structure. But something has to break soon. We're into January now. Spring training is just around the corner, and yeah, I know that sounds crazy because it feels like the World Series just happened, but that's because it kind of did. The season went the full distance, Game 7, extra innings, the whole dramatic finish, so the offseason is compressed. The way I see it, Tucker's waiting. He's seeing if anyone blinks and ups their offer. If nobody does, he's got a decision to make. Long-term security in Toronto with a team that's loading up and has his former teammates recruiting him, or short-term money with the Dodgers, where he can reset the market in a couple years. Bichette's probably in a similar boat, except now he's got the Yankees, Dodgers, and Cubs all circling in addition to the Red Sox. This is going to come down to the wire. Passan saying he thinks the Jays get one of these guys is significant, but it's also not a guarantee. There are absolutely scenarios where they whiff on all three, and that would be catastrophic for a franchise that's trying to convince Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to sign an extension and show the fan base they're serious about winning. The next few weeks are crucial. We're talking about franchise-altering decisions that will shape the Blue Jays for the next decade. Tucker, Bichette, or both. One of them in pinstripes. The possibilities are endless, and the anxiety is real. But if you're a Jays fan, you've got to feel at least a little optimistic that Passan, who's as plugged in as anyone, thinks they're walking away with someone significant. This offseason has been a roller coaster, and we're not even close to being done. Every day brings new rumors, new possibilities, new reasons to refresh Twitter and Blue Sky 100 times. But that's baseball in January. That's why we love it. The anticipation, the speculation, the hope that your team is about to make the move that changes everything. Stay tuned, because this is far from over, and when something breaks, it's going to break big. Look, we need to talk about what just went down in the baseball world, because this is getting wild. Jeff Passan and John Heyman just dropped some massive free agency bombs, and honestly, Blue Jays fans might want to sit down for this one.